I am the king!
People who lose elections decide democracy is the problem, then start praising strong rulers. The idea sounds practical, history says otherwise. Here's why monarchy never works.
Start with Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics. A book explained why concentrated power ruins markets. Markets need free choice, secure property rights, decentralized decisions, real incentives. Prices are signals, millions of people adjusting daily. I strongly recommend everyone to read this book. Now imagine we have a strong ruler, a supreme leader who picks winners, set priorities, decide acceptable outcomes. The economy stops responding to reality. It responds to someone's preference. Soviet Union. Moscow decided how much grain Ukraine should produce. Targets were set by people who had never touched the soil. Grain was harvested too early to hit quota. Fields were overworked. On paper, big success. In reality, bread lines. China in 1950s, the Great Leap Forward. Local officials were told steel production was the priority, so villagers shut down farms and built backyard furnaces. Pots, pans, door handles, all melted down to meet steel target. The numbers look fantastic. China produced millions of tons of steel. It was useless slag. Crops were left to rot, and tens of millions starved. Why? Once power is concentrated, truth becomes dangerous. Officials don't report reality upward, they report what won't get them punished. Turns the market into a national guessing game, played with people's lives. And then here comes Hayek's The Road to Serfdom. Hayek wrote the book in 1944 during World War II. The book was a warning to British and Western audiences, saying that don't think authoritarianism only happened over there. He was explicitly influenced by what he saw in Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, Soviet central planning. In a book, he said, "I've seen how this ends. Don't repeat it." He also said that if ordinary people lack real political rights, no checks on power, no independent courts, no way to say no, it will slide step by step into authoritarian control. Why is it the case? Because the moment the state plans outcomes, it has to choose whose needs matters more, which group waits, and which group sacrifices. And the people will disagree. They always do. But there's no persuasion, only enforcement. And that is the road to serfdom. A monarch with good intentions suddenly collapses into tyranny. Next, let's bring in a Nobel-level book, Why Nations Fail, by Asa Monglu and Robinson. This book doesn't argue ideology, it classifies institutions. Inclusive institutions protect property rights, allow broad participation, limit arbitrary power, and encourage innovation. On the other hand, extractive institutions concentrate powers and wealth at the top. Here is the key point. Extractive system can grow, they can industrialize, they can build roads, factories, cities, but they hit a ceiling. Old-style monarchy and the long-term strongman rule are extractive by design. Growth happens until growth demands political inclusion, and that inclusion usually means democratization, or you stagnate in the middle income trap. Eastern Asian countries like Taiwan and Korea are the good examples. Together with another book, The Dictator's Handbook. No rulers rule alone. Every leader depends on a winning coalition, generals, cronies, party bosses, family members, the small group that keeps them in power. In monarchies and strongman systems, the coalition is tiny. So, loyalty isn't bought with public goods, it's bought with private rewards, wealth, privileges, immunity, fear. As long as the inner circle is happy, the ruler survives. But the system is inherently unstable. Someone feels shortchanges, resources shrink, the coalition fractures. Lastly, let's deal with the colonialism argument. People usually like to think the success of Western world is merely depend on colonizing and exploiting other countries. But if we stop looking at the Western world as a whole, we will see it is actually more complicated. Spain looted Americas for centuries. Gold, silver, forced labor. It became unimaginably rich, and then it declined. Why? Extractive institution. Wealth funneled to the crown and elites. Innovation stifled. Broad participation discouraged. England also colonized, but built inclusive institutions, parliament, property rights, legal protections. Colonial wealth helped for sure, but institutions make the difference. Colonial gold without reform just buys a more expensive failure. Plato, the most abused philosopher in this debate. Yes, Plato criticized democracy, but he was attacking direct Asian democracy, mass assemblies voting directly on everything, no representatives, no constitutional checks, demagogue everywhere. This is not modern representative. We have elected representatives, separation of powers, rule of law, courts, constitutions, precisely the guardrails Plato never saw. More importantly, Plato despised monarchs. So yes, call me less qualified, but Thomas Sowell is qualified. Hayek is qualified. Why Nations Fail is qualified. The Dictator's Handbook is qualified. Plato is qualified. History is extremely qualified. And they all converge on the same conclusion. Systems that depend on one person or a tiny inner circle staying strong, wise, and balanced for decades eventually extract more than they create. Democracy isn't perfect, but it beats the fantasy of having benevolent strongmen.